Kazakhstan, 30 years of independence. Once we were part of one country, we were close neighbors, 15 republics of the Soviet Union. Much has changed since 1991, but one thing has remained the same. We're still close neighbors today. How did the relationships between our nations develop in the past? What's happening now, and what are our plans for the future? How do people in our countries live and interact with each other? Kazakhstan and its neighbors, in a special Qazaq TV project, Close Neighbors. Kadriorg or Catherine Park, Tallinn, Roman Baroque and Versailles views. Gazebos upon with a drake, flower beds and alleys, magnificent beauty. But we're looking for a certain place, more precisely, a certain tree, personalized one.
Эту дерево мы подарили Димашу 2020.
We presented this tree to Dimash in 2020 when he turned 26 years old. We wanted to give him something eternal, and linden trees can grow for 600 years.
Они растут, да, они могут, то есть быть 600 лет расти.
Very emotional ladies break all stereotypes about Estonians. Under this freezing rain and piercing wind, as if warmed by the love for their idol. I think I like Samaltao. What about you? I love SOS. It was love at first sight. From the very beginning.
Скромный, очень дружелюбный.
Humble, very friendly, very open, and with great personality traits. I fell in love with him primarily because of his incredible voice. At first, when I heard him, well, I was curious, is it possible for a human to actually sing like that?
Потому что вот я влюбилась в него сперва из-за того, сперва вот я слышу, неужели, что человек так может петь?
The most persistent Estonian dears. That is how Dimash Kudaibergen calls all his fans. Because of the pandemic, we rarely get together, says Marika, but the fan club is growing despite the COVID.
Около 1000, и половина из них из Эстонии, то есть те, жители, которые живут в Эстонии. У нас очень много.
About 1,500 of them are from Estonia, the residents of Estonia. We have a lot of Kazakh members. They visit us sometimes, and we dream to visit you. We didn't really know about Kazakhstan, but thanks to Dimash, we really want to come and see Kazakhstan.
Мы очень-то знали про Казахстан. А вот благодаря Димашу мы так хотим приехать в Казахстан.
The music that connected us. In general, we have a lot in common. Despite the distance, Kazakhstan and Estonia are close neighbors.
Tänan teid võimaluse eest.
Thank you for the opportunity to welcome the people of Kazakhstan led by the President on the occasion of the 30th anniversary. I want to express my special gratitude to the great leader of your people, Nursultan Nazarbayev.
Teie rahva suurele juhile Nursultan Nazarbayevile.
The Republic of Estonia is a state located in northern Europe on the eastern coast of the Baltic Sea. It borders with Russia, Latvia, and Finland. Territory 45,227 square kilometers, 129th place in the world. Population as of January 1st, 2021, more than 1,300,000 people. Capital, Tallinn. National currency, Euro. Diplomatic relations between the Republic of Estonia and the Republic of Kazakhstan were established on May 27, 1992. A city in which the Middle Ages successfully coexists with blocks from the future. All Tomas at the top of Tallinn City Hall, and the courier robot patiently waiting for a green traffic light. Strict high-tech lines and tiled roofs.
Старый город.
The old town is indisputably the pearl of Tallinn. Estonia in general has well-preserved building structures from previous centuries.
И он живой город. Люди там живут, там есть музеи, люди там работают.
It is a vibrant city. People live and work there. There are museums. It's not a park for only tourists to see, but this is the real center of the city. Our government is located there, as well as parliament and shops. In pre-pandemic time, in reality, the number of tourists visiting Estonia every year has been 5 times more than the country's residents. So Tallinn is the most important place.
То есть 5 раз больше туристов, чем у нас живет в стране жителей. Так что это и самое главное место это Таллин.
It's beautiful at any time of the year, whether it's blooming, cloudy, or snowy. According to one version, the name of the Estonian capital is translated Winter City. By the way, the mayor of Tallinn is from Qazaq.
Да, Михаил Кылварда, мэр Таллин.
Yes, Mikhail Kilvart, the mayor of Tallinn, is from there. Before that, he had been vice mayor for several years. So he worked for many years at the mayor's office in Tallinn.
Мэрии в Таллине.
In such weather, it's a pleasure to contemplate the everyday life of the Estonian capital with a cup of hot tea or coffee from a window. But since the weather is not so great, one can visit the museums. Fortunately, there are a great many of them in Estonia. On the town hall square, a must-see point is the oldest pharmacy. Earthworms and oil. Doctors prescribe them for rheumatism. Wood lice tincture is diuretic. Burn bees, toads, snakes, and for some reason, hedgehogs. There are no comments on these drugs. They used whatever they could imagine to treat in the Dark Middle Ages, or to be more precise, to cripple. However, thanks to the dynasty pharmacists, this shop was kept. Now it's the main museum of Tallinn.
Praegu olete tulnud Eesti Ajaloomuuseumi.
You are now at the Great Guild building of the Estonian History Museum. The building was built in 1410. It was during the Middle Ages when wealthy married merchants of German descent decided to build this luxurious home for their community. There is one expression about how they were able to build it. Tallinn is built on salt.
Oma ühingule sellise uhke maja ehitada. Ja kuidas nad said seda ehitada, on üks ütlus.
The medieval scale of import of salt is surprising even today. In just one day, July 15, 1442, 57 ships arrived with the spice. Suppliers and customers were strictly prohibited from using their scales. For this, a special building was erected on the town hall square, Vasna. Tallinn residents received an important spice in exchange for their grain. In the modern commodity turnover, the position of salt has been greatly shaken. One might say, dissolved.
Каждый год 50 миллионов товарооборота все-таки откуда-то появляется. Мы знаем, что
Every year it has turnover worth 15 million. They also buy laser optical equipment from Estonia to measure very delicate materials or things.
измерять очень тонкие материалы или вещи.
Estonia exports to Kazakhstan machinery and mechanical devices, base metal products and animal products. Kazakhstan supplies Estonia mainly with chemical products and minerals.
У нас 68 предприятий совместно зарегистрированы.
We have 68 joint enterprises registered in Kazakhstan with the participation of Estonian capital. Therefore, despite the fact that the pandemic has somewhat slowed down the contacts among business representatives, nevertheless, we witness an interest from both sides, and this cannot but please us.
Это нас не может не радовать.
We arrived to the right address. It's clear right away. By the Kazakh flag. Here it is, flies next to the Estonian and corporate banner of the company. It is the first plant in Estonia to manufacture aircraft equipment. We have worked in this industry for a long time, each one on his own, and just realized that there is a niche that we can enter together. Today, the company provides ground power for aircraft in all corners of the world, from Latin America to Central Asia.
И в 2011 году мы начали там, серьезно, Казахстан.
And in 2011, we began to work in Kazakhstan. The hangar, which was built for the fleet of the leader of Kazakhstan, was fully equipped in 2013.
В 2012, наверное, году мы полностью ангара снастили.
Estonian converters are used by the airports of Nur-Sultan, Almaty, Petropavl, Turkestan, so as not to consume fuel and not to emit harmful substances into the atmosphere. How it's done? Briefly about the production process. Design department obviously is involved in designing. Colored coils, bolts, circuits, wires, and other necessary parts are at the assembly workshop. Further on, testing of the sample and final assembly. At the moment, we have shown you that there is equipment in production that is being prepared for shipment to Nur-Sultan and Shymkent. This is not mass production. Exclusive equipment is assembled for the needs of each customer, taking into account climatic and other features.
Сейчас мы, например, с ними мы предполагаем сделать совместный.
At the moment, we're going to make a joint product that will be made in Kazakhstan using only a part of our equipment, and the main parts will be made, assembled, and invented there. I think that in 2022 we will launch it.
Я думаю, что мы в 2022 году мы это запустим.
Мы должны просто больше встречаться, больше ехать друг к другу в гости.
We should just meet, visit each other, and interact as often as possible. Interaction results in both good ideas and good joint ventures and projects.
Фирмы, совместные проекты.
Today, the most popular projects for both parties are in the field of digitalization. Estonia has long been at the top of the global IT industry. The country holds the record for the number of startups. Today, this country occupies a leading position in the field of cybersecurity, both in the world and in Europe. In the field of digital technologies, in general, in the field of digitalization. Therefore, this experience is also of great interest for Kazakhstan.
Почти все услуги в Эстонии ты можешь делать, человек может делать дома.
A person can receive almost all services in Estonia from home, even vote. There are only two services that one needs to do strictly in person: to get married and get divorced.
Жениться и разводиться.
Well, how can one not mention the most talked about divorce, Estonia, Parnu? The first half of the 18th century. It is the pre-digital era. The main characters are the Moor of Peter the Great, who is also Pushkin's great-grandfather, with his young wife.
И вот эта очень такая экстравагантная пара приезжает в маленький провинциальный.
And this very extravagant couple comes to such a small provincial town of Parnu. And soon they have a baby. But the baby turns out to be completely light-skinned. And Hannibal realized that there was a misunderstanding, and apparently the child is still not his.
И, видимо, ребеночек это все-таки не его.
On every corner of this Baltic Sea, the entire local community, all 2,000 people, discuss this family drama. Talk shows on an urban scale. Here's a story of abuse by a deceived husband and an attempt at poisoning by an unfaithful wife, and her exile to a monastery. His anger and sadness he expressed in such a way that as soon as he saw a beautiful girl walking around the city, he dragged her into his carriage and did to her whatever he wanted. This was his way to get back at his wife. And they say that after Hannibal left Parnu, there were very dark-skinned children running on the streets. From that moment on, they involuntarily looked closely at the residents. They were looking for Pushkin's features. By the way, it was here in Parnu that the great-grandfather of the great poet not only survived the tragedy, but also found happiness. He left this place with a new wife, while his first spouse, as they say, has become a ghost and a local landmark. More on this tourist attractions. Before you is our red tower, and tourists are sometimes confused. They're looking for a red tower, but it turns out to be white. Within its walls, you will not only be told about 15,000 years of this region, they will show it to you right on the walls of the tower. There is no noise typical for resort areas in Pärnu. Even at the peak of the season, there are only wide sandy beaches, shallow water, and the best sun in Estonia. It even pleased us with its race a couple of times. The first boarding houses appeared here in the middle of the 19th century, even though the program was to stimulate tourism. At the beginning of the 20th century, they began to issue permits for the construction of private houses to residents of the city of Pärnu, but on one condition, that in the summer they had to rent rooms to vacationers who came to Pärnu. And so it became the most European, wooden houses in cheerful colors and neat lawns. In Soviet times, tens of thousands of people used to vacation in Pärnu every year. Today, it is also a popular place.
Когда был ваш президент у нас, он...
When your president was visiting us, he also sailed a ship on the Gulf of Finland and said that that would be of interest for his people.
Наши людей.
Очень популярно у нас спа-туризм. То есть люди едут...
Spa tourism is very popular here too. People come here for rest. There is mineral water and mineral mud. You can take special baths. At one time, there can be more tourists, especially from Finland or Scandinavia, than the residents themselves.
Особенно финских или скандинавских туристов больше, чем жителей в одно время.
Fashionable hotels, exciting stories, royal and nightly streets are half empty today. The beaches and the sea at this time of year is obviously a pleasure for those who like cold weather. But on a warm summer day and on a chilly autumn day in Pärnu, Estonians themselves first of all go to the main square. On February 23, 1918, on a very cold February evening, the Estonian Independence Manifesto was read. And it happened in Pärnu. We are very proud of it. And the manifesto was read from the balcony of the Endla Theater. The Endla Theater itself, unfortunately, has not survived. Independence Day in Estonia is celebrated on February 24th, because then the manifesto was read in Tallinn. Tallinn, Maarjamäe Castle. The sea is very close. Bronze leaders are washed by the rain. Here is a cinema museum. By the way, one of the most famous Estonian films, Dead Mountaineers Hotel, was filmed not far from Šimbulak. Well, movie fans should recognize the main building at first sight. The Hound of the Baskervilles was filmed outside, and there are scenes of Holmes and Watson driving up to the castle and walking around. And you can see the pathway and the fence, so they used the exterior for the film. Inside, everything, of course, has changed. Made for people and about people. Estonia from the beginning of the last century and even earlier. A history that unites our countries as well.
Но знаете, эта история очень длинная, но не всегда самая приятная, конечно. Мы были ведь в составе одной...
This history is very long and not always the most pleasant, of course. After all, we were part of one large colonial empire, and the first people from Estonia who served in Kazakhstan were military personnel. There were quite a few interesting points of contact. There were common troubles. When there were great repressions, then among the repressed people, there were quite a few Estonian people who were exiled to Kazakhstan.
И достаточно много эстонских людей, которые туда переселились.
And this is also a common past, a shared Soviet past. The jars empty and with cucumbers, skis, old newspapers, and so on. All the necessary stuff, stored for decades. Suddenly come in handy, as if we are in the storage closet from the 1980s. Arnold Brutel, another former president of ours, he opened the very first exhibition in 1987.
Eesti oli esimene eneseliiduvabariik, kes oma
Estonia became the first republic of the USSR to declare its independence. With this step, we aroused the anger of the former central government in Moscow, the consequences of which I personally had to experience more than once. Nursultan Nazarbayev, who balanced and resolutely supported our desire for independence, rendered great help to the Estonians in this struggle.
oma tasakaaluka ja tugeva toetusega meie iseseisvuse püüdlustele.
The last chairman of the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the Estonian SSR and the second president of Estonia at the turn of two eras. Exclusive interview. Arnold Brutel has been to Kazakhstan more than once.
Meelde on jäänud tõusmine ligi 100 meetri kõrguse vaatetorni tippu.
In the evening on the day of arrival, we were introduced to the city of Astana, now known as Nur-Sultan. I remember how we climbed to the top of the observation tower almost 100 meters high, from where a beautiful view of the new capital opened up. I especially remember that the height of the tower was exactly 97 meters. This was done to capture for the following generations the year when the construction of the new capital began. It was 1997.
1997.
At 93, he still works, writes articles, and delivers reports. More precisely, he delivered them before the pandemic. Estonia, by the way, is the only country from all European countries where it's officially allowed to confirm safety from infection with any vaccines recognized in the world. Everywhere they say vaccination and so on, what measures should be taken. But you know, in most states in Europe, parliaments, the officials, do not discuss vaccinations or any measures against COVID. Instead, they discuss how to be stronger, more successful after COVID. It has already changed the world. Deserted streets, rain, and even the mood. Now it's gray. A local joke is that summer in Estonia is 2 months a year, and the rest of the time is November. It begins to darken at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And what to do on these long, dark nights? That's right, watch a movie. People want to enjoy a movie not only during the festival, but also for the rest of the year. They enjoy auteur films. The Estonian film has become very popular. So we were very lucky in this sense before COVID. 25th Tallinn Film Festival Dark Nights. During this filming, there were still a couple of days left before the start. Tina Lok, the longtime director and one of the most powerful women in the global entertainment industry, took the time for us. Magic words were that we are from Kazakhstan. I just looked it up, and it turns out that Kazakh films have been in our programs for 20 years. And the very first film was The Road. So your filmmakers participate here on a regular basis. So far, we have shown 22 Kazakh films. This year, our country was represented by 2 film pictures, Collective Immunity by Adilkhan Yerjanov and Mukagali by Bulat Kalimbetov. The biopic about the Kazakh writer and poet won the Special Jury Award with its poetic language and visual richness, filmed so magnificently that some of the shots are like art canvases, so they would stay after. There is a fantastic stylization similar to Soviet films, also in content and time, style and colors. The Wolf, or rather its small copy, left for Kazakhstan a couple of weeks after our filming. This year, Tarkovsky's Jubilee was also celebrated at the film festival. In Estonia, he filmed Stalker at an abandoned power plant. Now, there is an unusual space. There is a cultural melting pot in the former boiler room. Within walking distance from it, there is the most vivid impression of Tallinn, a whole art quarter. The area has a beautiful name, Teleskivi, which means brick in Estonian. It occupies 11 buildings of the former Tallinn electrotechnical plant. Selfie interpreted by the artist and a real one. On weekdays, it's usually quiet here, and the only visitor to this cafe is patiently waiting for its opening. Amazing Estonia, an industrial bride of colors and patriarchal foundations, only 15 minutes apart. This farm is called Saasi Farm. It was built in 1803, and the dwelling house is located there. It's very long and is called a dwelling barn. And they just lived in the same room in the house, cooked food, slept, dried sheaves of rye, and even washed themselves. We contemplated, listened, and were imbued with it. The families were big, the main food was porridge and rye bread, and horse was the most valuable thing that Estonian peasants had. It's very interesting here in the barns. As you can see below, there are such holes. What do you think they're for? They were made for a cat, so that it could run here, because grain and food were stored here, and mice and rats could eat them, so the cat had to be here sometimes. Also a valuable inhabitant of the house. We saw it next doors. The oldest employee of the museum was lying under the stove, warming itself. The peasants rarely lay on the stove, even in the winter, when there was more time, but they always loved to have fun. What carols alone are worth. Estonians generally know a lot about entertainment. There is a championship of carrying wives on the back or swinging on the swing. They're also very fond of singing and baths, the most singing nation, with the largest collection of folk songs. The ethnic village is spread out in the forests. Almost half of Estonia is occupied by pines, spruces, birches. The woodworking industry makes up a significant part of the Estonian economy.
В Эстонии две отрасли, где мы очень-очень, я могу сказать, сильные. Первое это разные элемент и модульные дома.
There are two industries in Estonia where we are very strong. First, there are different elements and modular houses, farms, saunas, or even summer cottages. But now the technology allows for building ordinary apartment buildings made of wood, with 3 or 4 floors.
Нормальные квартирные дома, там 3-4 этажа из дерева.
These houses that we are producing are calculated for usage for at least 50 years, and also all these houses are built or produced according to Nordic regulations. So it means that these houses are meant to minus 30 degrees.
But it's better to see everything with your own eyes. Factory for the production of houses. Yes, there is something like that. Before entering the shops, safety precautions, helmets, overalls, and even safety shoes. Let's see an animated guide to industrial code of conduct. And here it is, production itself. The modules here are assembled manually, and the construction here is on the track, in every sense of the word. The fully assembled house arrives at the finish line.
As I have understood that Kazakhstan is very rapidly evolving economy, and so I understand there you have a lot of need for living spaces and also accommodation for workers or schoolhouses. So I think it's very quick and efficient way to create these spaces in a very short time.
Well, let's be friends. In houses, museums, film festivals, resorts, and with songs. The most important thing is to keep our friendship. Kazakhstan, 30 years of independence, a new look at long-standing relationships, innovative technologies, and medieval heritage. Where is the oldest pharmacy? How Pushkin's great-grandfather ended up in Parnu, and the biggest fan club of Dimash Kudaibergen. Estonia and Kazakhstan, in a special Qazaq TV project, Close Neighbors.